I'm Kayla, and today I'm going to talk to you about how to easily and accurately adjust your Dynacraft kids bike. Having a properly adjusted bicycle can make all the difference between a pleasant ride and one that's uncomfortable, frustrating, or even unsafe. That's why I'm here to help you to correctly fit and adjust your little one's bike to keep them feeling great as they pedal. I'll be walking you through the steps one by one. When fitting your child's bike to them, there are 4 areas that affect how comfortable their ride will be. The frame size, the saddle, including saddle height, angle, and backward-forward placement, the handlebar, including height and bar angle, and the angle of the brake levers. The only thing you can't adjust out of these 4 is the frame size, so it is important to choose the proper bicycle for your child's body measurements. The way to check if the frame fits them is to understand standover height, which isn't as complicated as it sounds. It's all about how much room there is between your child and the bike when they're standing over it. To figure out which standover height is right for your child, you need to first measure their inseam. Be sure to keep their shoes on and measure all the way to the ground, like this. Next, compare this measurement with the standover height of the bike. Their inseam should be 1 to 3 inches higher than the bicycle's standover height. That way, when standing over the bike, they should have 1 to 3 inches of space between them and the top tube of the frame. If they have less than 1 inch, the bike is too big and it could be uncomfortable or even dangerous to get off. With more than 3 inches of space, the bike is too small and may not be able to be adjusted to their body, which could also make their ride uncomfortable or even unsafe. Now that we know their bike is the right size, it's time to move on to the adjustments. You will need a few different tools depending on your particular bike. An adjustable wrench and a set of metric Allen wrenches will most likely be required. A level will also come in handy to adjust everything properly. The first thing we want to do is to adjust the saddle to the correct height. It is important that your child's feet can touch the ground while they're seated on the bike. This is especially true if they're riding without training wheels. Some children will also prefer to start out with their seat in a lower position, which is perfectly fine. To get a general idea of where it should be, have your child stand next to the bike. The saddle should be right around hip level. Then, have them sit on the bike and place the pedal in the lowest, or 6 o'clock position like this. With the pedal in this position, their knee will be slightly bent. If their leg has too much bend when their foot is on the pedal, or if their foot doesn't reach the pedal, you should move the saddle up or down. To do this, have them dismount the bike, open the quick release here, and adjust the saddle. Remember to take note of the minimum insertion mark when adjusting the saddle up or down. This mark should always remain covered by the frame. The saddle should also be in line with the frame of the bicycle. After tightening the lever back up, check the saddle height one last time. Make sure that it's tight and does not rotate in the seat tube. Now let's adjust the angle of the saddle. This is where a level can come in handy. In general, most people will want the saddle to be level with the ground, like this. If your child is experiencing numbness or pressure from the saddle, you can tilt the front up or down. To tilt the saddle, loosen the nut under the saddle here. Be careful not to loosen it too much or remove it. After it's been loosened, you will be able to tilt the saddle up or down to find the right position for them. Once you have it where you like it, just tighten the nut back up. The forward and backward position of the saddle involves a little more thought. Have your child hop back on the bike and put the pedal into the 3 o'clock position, like this. The front of your child's knee should be above the middle of the pedal, like this. Just eyeball it and get as close as you can. If the front of their knee isn't above the middle of the pedal, then you need to move the saddle back or forth to line it up. Loosen the same nut that we just talked about, being careful again not to loosen it all the way or remove it. Move the saddle back or forth until it's in the right position, then tighten it back up. Check to make sure it's still level and lined up with the frame one last time and make any more adjustments that are needed. After you're finished, double check that the seat bolts are fully tightened. The saddle shouldn't tilt up or down or move side to side. With the saddle height, tilt, and forward-backward adjustment all set, we can move on to the handlebar. The two things we can adjust on most handlebars are the height and angle. To adjust the height of the handlebar, loosen the bolt on the stem here. Some bikes require an Allen wrench for this bolt, while some can be loosened with an adjustable wrench. Once the bolt is loosened, raise or lower the stem until you find a comfortable position. This is really a matter of preference, as some riders prefer a more upright position for comfort, while others like to be more aerodynamic for performance. Keep in mind that just like the seat post, the minimum insertion mark on the stem has to remain hidden. Once you have the handlebar at a comfortable height, tighten the stem bolt back up, keeping the stem in a straight line with the front wheel. Check to make sure the stem is secure by holding the front wheel between your legs and trying to move the handlebar back and forth, like this. It should not move. Adjusting the angle of the handlebar is next. This is done by loosening the bolt or bolts on the front of the stem here. The key is not to loosen them very much, just until the handlebar can move. Once the handlebar is loose, rotate the bar back and forth until it feels comfortable. Don't worry about the angle of the brake levers right now. We'll adjust those next. In the ideal position, your child's arms should have a slight bend in them, like this, to help absorb some of the bumps. It is best to avoid having their arms locked completely straight, as this can be uncomfortable and make for a rough ride. Once you have the handlebar where it is comfortable for them, retighten the bolt or bolts on the stem. If the bike has more than one bolt, it is important to tighten them evenly, a little at a time, until everything is snug and the handlebar can't be rotated within the clamp. Now that the handlebar is set, it's time to make sure the brake lever or levers are at a comfortable angle. Ideally, the tops of your child's hands will be in a straight line with their arms like this. You want to avoid having their wrists at an extreme angle one way or the other. To adjust the brake levers, loosen the bolt here. Only loosen it enough for the lever to move, being careful not to remove the bolt. Once you can move the lever, adjust it to the angle that best suits them. Then, just tighten it back up so that it stays put on the handlebar. If you have two brake levers, repeat this step for the other side. For riders with smaller hands, you can adjust the reach of the brake lever by turning in the screw here. Once you have adjusted everything to a comfortable position, double check it's all secure by trying to move the brake levers like this. They shouldn't budge at all. If your little one's bike has training wheels, it is important to have them balanced evenly. To do so, set the bike upright, perfectly straight, and loosen the nut on one side. Leave about a 1/4 inch space between the ground and the training wheel. Once the training wheel is in place, tighten the nut back up. Now do the same for the other side. The space between the ground and the training wheel should be exactly the same on both sides. Before riding, it is a good idea to go over all the nuts or bolts that we've used for adjustments, as well as the ones we didn't touch. Everything should be nice and snug, but be careful not to over-tighten. Also, take the time to make sure the tires are pumped up to the recommended pressure, which is a number you'll find on the side of the tire, followed by PSI. Now that we're sure your frame is the right size and the saddle and handlebar have been adjusted, it's time to go for a spin. Always remember, wear a helmet. Don't forget, having the right bike and making sure it's adjusted correctly will help keep your ride as safe and fun as possible. Enjoy!